directly write that in your answer, right? Most of your questions would be in a direct way, right? Next is an open-ended question. So, for example, if you see application of current classification in the clinical scenario, future of periodontics, aesthetics in periodontics and implantology, they would want you to think like this. Have you seen this? Anyone? I can see only few hands. Only the people who have not studied Carranza till now. Okay, anyways. So this is a very good series. Okay, it's called Black Mirror. So this particular episode, it's all about open-ended endings, right? It has multiple endings. So you have to approach open-ended questions in this type of way, right? Think from all ends. Do not stick to only one type of, like only perio or only that particular topic. Widen your mind, right? Try to be imaginative. Also, relate what can be related. Don't just relate anything with anything. Just try to relate what can be related, which is particular to that kind of topic. State whatever you can provide evidences for. So for this reason, I'm asking you to collect systematic reviews and meta-analysis of last 2 years. And also try and state your conclusion and opinions, right? Next comes the debatable type of questions. Okay? So debatable type of questions basically have two schools of thought. Okay? So examples being, firstly, your specific versus non-specific, your surgical versus non-surgical periodontal therapy, your pack or not to pack, right? So these questions, you have to give justification to each of them, right? Do not stress on only one topic. Whenever these type of question comes, you have to give equal weightage to each of the topics. Okay? Have an advantage and a disadvantage table for each of the topics. Have a for and against table for each of the topic, right? And definitely an author war. Try and remember at least 2 authors from each of the topics. Okay? And put it in the table. Gives a different impact. Next, coming to the technique or process based questions. So these type of questions would have an algorithmic type of answer, right? A step 1 to step 10 or maybe more. A stepwise kind of answer would be there. Okay? So for example, modified Whitman flap, as ma'am said, resective osseous surgeries, your patterns of bone destruction, and so these type of questions it would be better if you follow a very chronologically flowcharty kind of way of answering them. Try not to go to the main point pehle. Okay? Talk about the mechanism of action, talk about the pathogenesis, something about the history. Then once you present your main answer, try to present it in a flowchart. Because firstly, when you present it in a flowchart, your bulk increases. Okay? And secondly, whatever points you have, even if you are not good in English, you can actually just write few words, okay? And that would solve your problem, right? Few words would be enough to portray your point to the examiners. Third is quote authors. And last is always have diagrams, right? For this type of things. Again, your bulk will increase. If you're thinking about the quantity, you will get quantity as well as quality if you follow this rule. This is an example of mucogingival surgery. So I would just briefly go through this. So you have the introduction here, right? You have the authors written over here. Then you have the indications, you have the contraindications. See how we are leading to that, right? We are not directly jumping there. So lead to that, indications, contraindications, other procedures in MGS, and finally your free gingival graft, which is presented in a flowchart as well as diagrams. So it's your step 1, step 2, your step 3, and everything is presented so beautifully. So even when the examiner checks your paper, right? So even if he's not in a mood to check your paper, he or she would just see your diagrams and understand that you know the concept, right? So put some points on the healing and some disadvantages. That's how you should conclude your answer. Next, coming to situation or case based. So procedural questions or stepwise questions, they have a particular process or a particular case which you have to take care of. These type of questions, like situation or case based questions, have multiple things which can be incorporated. Okay, so it can be so one situation, for example, your management of Miller's class 1, class 2 or class 3 recessions, your management of black triangles, last year it came, Again, approaches to minimally invade the soft tissues. So these type of questions, also treatment of gummy smile, would again, you will have to think out of the box, right? Not only stick to one procedure, but try and incorporate even other disciplines. Like for example, treatment of gummy smile, you can have ortho-perio relationship, right? You can have an endo-perio relationship. So all these things you can just think of while writing the paper also, okay? But make sure that before that you are calm and composed. That's the main thing. Okay, so be imaginative, think apart from perio, prepare a rough content as ma'am said, because if you are halfway through and if you realize that, oh shit, I'm not able to answer this question now. So that is a very risk thing that can happen so always prepare a rough content in your mind if possible. So there's a page on the left side of your answer sheet. Take a pencil, draw a rough sketch of your answer, right? And stick to the main situation, because when you're trying to be imaginative, you might go in some other direction. So that should not happen. Always stick to the main point. Next is linkable questions. So these type of questions would again link two topics. For example, gingival enlargement and treatment, your periodontal medicine like obesity and periodontitis, diabetes mellitus, periodontitis. So you have two topics in that, right? Also interdisciplinary periodontics. So in these type of questions, write briefly about each topic, write how they link. Okay, so if possible, draw a flowchart or a cycle that would relate both the topics. Then follow a chronology again. So this is an example of interdisciplinary approach in periodontics. So here we can see there's an introduction, why an interdisciplinary approach is required. Then we are talking about all the disciplines, right? So that is OMDR, then your OP, then your ortho, cons, and all those things. So this is just a content. So just imagine what the paper would be. So once the examiner sees this content, so he would understand that you have written a very beautiful paper. In fact, maybe if he is not in a mood, he won't check your paper and udhari marks you'll get. Okay? So these things are very important. Then next, coming to the last point, that is flowchart questions, right? Flowchart questions are the questions which are usually SAQs, which you should attempt in only a flowchart kind of way. Like for example, your steps in coronoplasty, your stages of tissue response to TFO, your immunity and inflammation. So this is also one of examples how diabetes causes periodontitis. So these things try and make flowcharts directly. Okay? One small introduction, flowchart, khatam. That's it. Because that will save you time and also fetch you more marks, right? Next, we have to change our perception, right? So basically, if you see, questions mostly are two types. Okay? One is practical based. Practical based, like for your modified Whitman flap, which you do in a day-to-day basis, right? So these questions you'll be able to imagine. In fact, from your experience, you can write down. But then there are some questions which, like for your biochemistry of periodontium and all. So these you have not seen, right? If at all, like there would be places where you might have seen diagrams and all, but then imagination of all those things is difficult. So I would suggest you to go back home, try and write those questions in a diagrammatic way, from your own imagination from now on. Okay? So these questions, for example, I'll give you. So these are the types of hypersensitivity reactions. Okay, so you know type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, right? You know the theory. So this is how you can present it in a diagrammatic way in your own notes and then replicate the same in your examination. Just imagine how beautiful it would be if the examiner sees this, right? A small line about each of these diagrams. And so last would be the paper 4, okay, making the right choice. This is very, very important, guys, okay? Because paper 4 carries a lot of marks and it also gives you a lot of time to think, okay? So, there are two types of people, okay? One who imagine and write, one who can completely ratify, muckify and write, okay? So, even if you are one of those person, it depends upon the day, okay? If you are imaginative person, but your day is not correct, if you are facing some problem or something, just don't attempt the questions which have a variable content. Try to go for the safer option, that is a fixed content. So there are advantages and disadvantages for both of them. Like for example, fixed content, you can definitely recall and write. For the questions having variable content, you should have a thorough knowledge before. Fixed content is easy to score, but then again, if you are attempting a variable question with a variable content, it has more scope of scoring. Risk also is less involved in fixed, whereas more risk involved. Better time management would be there for your fixed content wall questions. Otherwise, if you are attempting variable content, you have to plan your time right when you're writing your contents. Okay, so always write your contents before you start writing your paper 4, roughly in the left side of your answer sheet. And definitely the fixed content will have a less bulk of illustrations. So that's it. Thank you so much, and all the best to all you guys. And thank you so much, AFMC, for giving me this esteemed platform to talk on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ankit.